There are lots of ways that custom software can allow us to turn our data into action. We can use our software to ensure the integrity of our data by using something like an approval flow. And we can display that data in ways that allow decisions to be clear and metrics to be tracked over time. Hi, I'm Kevin from Budibase. And in this video, I want to look at that second piece, how we can display data in ways that allow us to make better decisions. This follows on from a previous video, which I'll link to up above, where we built an approval workflow where staff could enter some stats and an approver could then decide whether or not that was approved data. Once that data is approved, it gets appended to our database through an automation. And then it gets added to this report. In this report, I am tracking some key sales metrics. The revenue growth rate as a percentage, the revenue this month and last month, the sales conversions this month and last month, and the cost of customer acquisitions overall this month and last month. I've also created this chart of revenue over time and this chart where we're tracking the revenue over time. Where we left off last time, we had nothing on this home screen. So let's dive in and start transforming this. So we'll do this row by row and we'll start with this revenue growth rate. We have the revenue growth rate, which we work out by adding together all the revenue from each region from this month, then adding together all the revenue from each region from last month, do this month's total minus last month's total and divide it by last month's total. And that'll give us a decimal, which we times by 100, which will be our percentage. Maybe we'll round it because this is pretty horrible. And we're going to do that with a custom SQL query. Now, if you are writing lots of reports, you've probably done custom SQL queries for those final reports already. The benefit of using them in Budibase is that they stay connected to the data. So every time a new piece of data is added to your database, your diagrams and your cards and your statistics are up to date. So let's add a component for headline, and we'll just call this revenue. And let's dive into creating the custom query. So our sales data, to remind us, has the regions, Paris, Belfast, and Chicago. There's some other regions that may appear there. London was another one. It has the month and the year. So the month is numeric and the year is numeric. That's all that we need. So I'll go to PostgreSQL, I'll go to queries, and I will create a new query. So I want to select this month's revenue minus last month's revenue divided by last month's revenue, and I want to times that by 100. And I'll need to give that a name, so I'll call this our revenue growth rate. So this month's revenue and last month's revenue don't exist in our database. We need to create those. So I'm going to say from, and whatever this is going to be, I'm going to call this month revenue. And then I'm going to do the same for last month revenue. Well, how do I do that? I need to sum the revenue where the month and the year match what I want them to be. So how can I make them match? And how can I make them dynamic? So the way we're going to do it is we're going to use bindings. So I'm going to create 4 bindings. One I'm going to call this month and this year. Then I'll have last month. I'm going to call the last binding last month year. And that's for that January-December overlap. We need to make sure that we're not a year out, which would knock our data out. I'm going to set some default values in here. I'll say this month, I'll set that to be 9 and this year to be 2023. Last month, I'll set to be 8 and 2023. So this month's revenue is going to select sum of revenue. And when we have a calculation, we'll have to name it in there. So as this month revenue from our sales KPI table, where month equals our binding for this month. So I use double curly braces for that, this month. And that's what Budibase offers us with this bindings. We're injecting the value of this month in here. And the year equals, and then our binding this year. So if I copy that query, it's almost identical for the last month. The last month revenue, and this is going to be last month and last month here. So let's run that query and see if we get back what we wanted. So we can get back a a revenue growth rate of 54.54. So our revenue has grown 54%. Now that's a pretty horrible number. So what I'll do is I'll wrap this as with the round function and give it to maybe 2 decimal places. I'll run it again. A much nicer number now. I can say this is a number. I can set the data type there, and now I can save this query. I can say this is our monthly revenue. Now, while I'm here, I'm also going to return those other values, the this month revenue and the last month revenue, because I'd like to display those as well, not just the growth rate, but also this month's and last month's revenue. So I can just check that those data come back. That looks good. Again, I can change these to be numbers if I'd like. And I can preview, all looks good, and I'll save that query. So I've created my custom query. That's going to get the data from the database as my user loads up this page. So let's use it. So back in my design tab, I've got my revenue, and I'm going to add 3 card blocks. So I'll create a container. And inside of that container, I'll call this my revenue container. And inside it, I'm going to add a card block. So it's currently looking at the sales KPI, but I'm going to hit this drop down and select monthly revenue. And there's only one card because there's actually only one set of results. And so the first one I want is the revenue growth rate. So revenue growth rate. I'll put it to title. And as a subtitle, I'll do new cards block and revenue growth rate. I'll just put a percentage after that and save. So 54.55% of revenue growth. I'm going to duplicate that block, and inside of here, it's going to be this month's revenue. And we'll change this to be in pounds. We'll do this month's revenue. And then we'll duplicate again, and we'll do last month's revenue. So last month's revenue, and we'll change the binding to be last month's revenue. So our container at the moment is sorting these vertically. So if we switch that to be horizontal, it looks good. There's quite a lot of space between these cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the style, and I'm going to set it to 30%. So each of these card blocks is going to take up 30% of the room. And there we go. We've got our revenue metrics being displayed. So as this new data is being approved and added to our database, this is being kept up to date. But this is currently using the default values. It's not using this month's actual month, this year's actual year. So next month or the month after, it's still going to see these default values. So how can I fix that? So I'm going to click on the card and hit this little cog over here. And this cog is showing me my large query that we created earlier on, and it's showing me the place to bind the values. So this month, I'm going to go to our binding here, and I'm going to do double curly braces. I'm going to use the date function. I'm going to say now, and I can do the format. And the format I want to give is the numeric month. So I'll do M. For the year then, I want to do date of now and year, 4-digit year. For last month, it's slightly more involved. I'm going to write a JavaScript function for that. And to do that, I'm going to get today's date. I'm going to set the month to be today's month -1. And so the previous month is going to be today.getMonth. And in JavaScript, the months are numbered 0 through 11. So we just need to add on 1 to get to the final answer, and we'll return the previous month. And for the previous year, it's very similar. So I'll go to JavaScript. I'll let today be a new date. I'll set the month to be 1 month less than it is at the moment. I'll check if the month is 11. So in other words, if it's December, then today.set full year, we should do today.get full year, and then take away 1 from that. So then we can now get the previous year. So previous month's year. And that's going to be today.get full year. And that's what we'll return, our previous month year. So I'll save that, and I'll save this, and this shouldn't change because all of the details that I used were today's. Okay, and that's our first row done. I should have done that on the first card and then copied with these values in for the other two. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the other values off screen. So the next row we'll look at is the sales conversion row. The sales conversion is worked out by dividing the number of sales by the number of leads and then timesing that by 100. We see this is overall, so that's all leads and all conversions for this month and for last month. So as before, that's going to start with a custom query. So I'll go to Postgres, I'll click on queries and I'll create a new query. And this is going to be my sales conversion. So the overall is the easiest one to do. So I want to select, I want to round the answer to this to 2 decimal places. The sum of the number of sales divided by the sum of the number of leads. I'm going to call that as sales conversion overall. And the table I want to use for that is my sales KPI table. So I've run that query. It says it's 0.00. And that's going to use integer division when we're inside of round. So I need to times this by 1.0 just to make sure that our SQL engine knows we're working in decimals. So we get this 51.52% overall. So that's the easiest overall. But we also want this to be dynamic for this month and last month. So we're going to use those same bindings. We'll have this month, which we'll call 9 for September. This year, 23. Last month, so it'd be 8, and last month here. So let's do last month's. So last month's, same idea. So I want to round to 2 decimal places, whatever this answer is. And I'll call this sales conversion last month. So we want to add 2 things together and divide the answer. So we want to get the number of sales. So I want to use a case statement. So this will iterate over each row and it will check some kind of conditional. And the conditional I want to say when the month equals last month and the year equals last month year. When that's both true, then I want to get the number of leads. Otherwise, 0. As before, I'll need to times this by 1.0 to make sure we get the decimals and everything just doesn't stay as integers. And we're just going to repeat this same logic here, copy this in here. And this time, instead of number of leads, we want number of sales. Sales divided by leads. I'll run that. You'll hopefully see, okay, last month's sales conversion, 0.56. We forgot the times by 100, but we can do that now. So we have the sales conversion overall. We have the sales conversion last month. The last thing we want is the sales conversion for this month. So let's change this to this month. And we're just going to change, instead of last month, it's going to be this month. And instead of last month here, it's going to be this year. So I run that query. I get my 3 values, my sales conversion overall, my sales conversion last month, and my sales conversion this month. So let's save that. And now let's add it to our page. So add another headline. It would be our sales conversions. And we will add a container. This will be our conversions container. And inside of there, we want to add a cards block. Our cards block's data is going to be our sales conversion. And we need to fill in this month, last month, this year, and last year. And so we can sort that out exactly the same as last time. So we can just copy over the values. So that was date now and single digit month. This was date now and 4-digit year. And then we get our card. So we'll have our overall. And the subtitle for that is going to be our cards block, sales conversion overall. and probably want a percentage sign at the end of that. So overall, we've got a sales percentage of 51.52%. Let's duplicate this. And this time we want this month. So we'll do lightning bolt. We'll change this to sales conversion this month. Save that. And then we'll duplicate it again. And we are going to change it to last month. Change that to sales conversion last month. Okay, so then we will orient that sideways and we'll go through each of them and we'll set their width to 30% again. Styles width, 30%, styles width. So we've got our revenue growth rate, our sales conversion, our cost of customer acquisition is going to be next. And that's going to be the number of new customers divided by the amount of marketing costs it took to be able to get them. So as before, we'll create the custom query and then we'll use that query to be able to fill in our cards. So let's do that. Data, PostgreSQL, queries, create new query. And again, overall is going to be the easiest use case here. So we'll do that one first, and then we'll work up from there. So I want to select, and we want to round this again to 2 decimal places, so it's a bit tidier. And I want the sum of the total marketing costs times by 1.0, so it knows we're working in decimals, divided by the sum of our number of new customers. And we'll call this our cost of customer over time. I want to get that from our Sales KPI database. We'll run our query. We'll see that 102.13 is what we're aiming for. So that's over time. We now want to do last month and this month. So again, we want to use our bindings. So this month, default to 9 this year, which will default to 2023. Last month, which will default to 8. And last month year, which will default to 2023 again. So let's do this month. So I want to round. So we're going to do a sum of something times 1.0 divided by the sum of something. We want to round that to 2 decimal places, and we're going to call that the cost of customer this month. So what are we going to put in these sums? Well, we want the total marketing costs for this month. So that's going to iterate over every row, and it's going to add together some value. So we need to use a case statement. So case when, and what's our case? Our case is when month equals this month and year equals this year. So if that's true, then I want the total marketing costs. Otherwise, I want 0. I'll end. Okay? And so I'm going to copy that case statement because it's almost going to be identical. Because instead of then total marketing cost, I want the number of new customers. Number of new customers. I'll run that query. Hopefully I'll get a value for, okay, so over time it costs £102 per customer. This month it's only cost £90 per customer. And last but not least, I'll just copy that that whole row one more time to get the cost of a customer from last month. So cost of customer last month. So I'll change when month to last month. And then I'll change the year to, instead of this year, it's a last month year. Instead of this year, it's last month year. And I'll run that query. I can see, well, last month it was slightly more expensive than average. This month it was slightly cheaper than average. Again, I can set these to numbers, which will just change how some of the display options I have in the front end. But the way I'm displaying them doesn't make much of a difference. So I'll just hit Save Query, and now I can go to my Design tab and display these. So I'm going to add another headline. This is going to be for our cost of customer acquisition. We'll have another container. Inside of our container, we're going to have a card block. Card block is going to be listening to our our cost of customer acquisition. We'll use a little cog, and we'll copy and paste the values from the other place we've used these, because it's exactly the same. So this month, this year, our JavaScript function, and this year. And so we'll just match what happened above. So we'll say overall, this is cost. So we'll use a pound sign. We'll use our lightning bolt. We'll say new card block, cost over time. And we'll delete description. We'll set its width to 30%. And we will copy this 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. We'll change this to this month. Change this to last month. And we'll change our container to oriented horizontally. So we've got really helpful statistics with data that we've validated because we have got an approval flow to make sure that only the data we want is getting in our database. And we've got these cards to be able to show that data. So already we can notice trends between this month, last month, and the overall. But it would be great to have more visuals, have a charts, and use those to be able to show us even more clearly what's happening. And so we'll look at 2 different charts. We'll look at this bar chart, which is just the revenue over time. And then we'll look at this slightly more complex chart, which is over time in regions, and we'll see how to construct those. So let's look at constructing this chart. Unsurprisingly, it's going to start with a SQL query. We want to work out the total amount of revenue for each month, and then we'll want to be able to display that in our graph. So I'll go to data, I'll create PostgreSQL query, create new query. I'm going to call this total revenue over time. So for this, I want to select the month and the year, and I want to sum the revenue, total revenue maybe, from our table, so from our Sales KPI table. But I want to group it, and I want to group it by month and year. And then I want to order it. So I want to order it first by years ascending, and then by months ascending. If I run that query, I can see in my preview, I got my 3 months, got the total revenue over time. It's looking good. If I want to, I can see years and number. I can set all of them to numbers again. Save the query, and now we can create the chart. Back in our design tab, add a component of a chart. For the chart block then, this is going to be our revenue chart. First of all, choose the data type, and for this one, it's just the total revenue over time. And then we can choose the chart type. So we've got pie, bar, line, donut, candlestick, and area. I'm going to choose a bar chart. I want to label them with the month, and the data I want to use is the total revenue. And so there we go. Total revenue over time. We might want the legend because actually it's all pretty clear. We might put a title and show total revenue over time. And then as we hover, we're getting the actual value being displayed there as well. So we create the custom query and then we display it. The last chart we want to look at then is this revenue by region over time. And again, we're able to jump between, we can see what each of the dots mean. It will only show the data points where we've got data for all of the labels that we want here. So it starts off the same. So I go to queries, create new query, and this is going to be our revenue by region. And this time we'll want to select the month, the year, the region, the sum of the revenue as regional revenue maybe. And we're going to do that from our Sales KPI table. Again, we'll group by month and year, but we'll also group by region in case there's multiple entries for a particular month for some reason. And then we'll order by year ascending, month ascending, and region ascending. We'll run that query, and we can see then we get each of the months, each of the years. It's looking pretty good. But there's a slight problem. So this will be returned as an array of objects, 1 for each row. And you can see actually we've got 2 rows for month 8, and we've got 2 rows for month 9. And to be able to be displayed properly on a line or bar chart, we need one row for each month. So we need to use our transformer here. We need to actually write some JavaScript to do some transforming. And that's one of the powers of Budibase. We can take the SQL query, we can use bindings to inject dynamic data into it, and then we can transform the data in some way. And effectively, what we want at the end of this is we want an array of objects that are going to have the month label. So maybe it'll have something like 0823 or 2023, something like that. And then we'll want for each of the cities, we want like Paris, and then Paris's income, like 22,000, and then Belfast, and Belfast income, like maybe 4,000, and whatever else is there. We want one object for each month. So in this transformer, we intercept this data and then get to transform it in some way. And it arrives as an array of objects. We're going to iterate over that array. So I'm going to create a transformed results constant. I'm going to get this by taking the data and reducing it. And reducing is one of the array methods in JavaScript. The callback function of our reduce function takes a accumulator and the current value. And then after our callback function, it takes the initial value. So we're starting off with an empty object. And what I want to create is a month key, a month year key. So month year key is going to be made up of the current month / current year. Okay. And I want to check whether or not that exists inside of my accumulator already, whether or not it's already in the object. So if it's not, accumulator of month year key, if that doesn't exist, then I want to create a new value. I'll say accumulator of month year key. It's going to have, and I'm going to set that month. I'll set the month to be month year key. So if it doesn't already exist, let it exist. Then I'm going to say that the accumulator of the month year key of current.region is going to equal current.regional revenue. And then I'll return the accumulator. So that's going to iterate over all of my rows. And by the end of that, I am going to have an object, but I want to turn that object into an array of values. I can do that using object.values. So I'll do const transformed results array. I'll do object.values, which will go through each of the keys. It'll extract those values and create an array just of those values. So I'll pass in my transformed results, and that's what I'm going to return at the end. So if I run that query, I can see now I've got on 7/2023, I've got value for Belfast. 8/2023, I've got Belfast and Paris. And 9/2023, I've got Belfast and Paris. Let's save that query now. And we'll go to our design tab and we'll add a final chart. This is going to be our regional revenue. We're going to choose this to be a line chart. We're going to use our region revenue by region query. Our label column is going to be month. And our data columns, well, I'm going to select Belfast and Paris. Then it's created those values. I can set the graph is set to smooth. It could be straight, which is, slightly more, or step line if we'd rather have those ready to go. But I think that looks pretty good. We set revenue over time for those particular values. So there we go. With our validated data that we've approved through our workflow, we now have an up-to-date dashboard that shows the revenue, sales, cost of customer acquisitions, and graphs to be able to display relevant metrics live and up to date. So rather than having to print off and publish a report each month, as the data is ready, we can now have this page live and up to date. There are lots of other KPIs and metrics you could inject here. There are lots of other ways that you can use data and graphs, but they're all going to follow that same kind of workflow. We'll gather the data in some way, probably with a custom query, and then we'll display it in some way to to be able to allow our data to drive action within our business. I hope you find this useful. If there are other ways that you're using data, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Subscribe for more videos like this and let us know what we can be building to help you turn your data into action. Thanks. Bye.